We're going to discuss open work with traveling stitches. It's going to be repeat looking like a cable. So first I started that little swatch on 7 pegs, but the repeat itself will happen on 5 pegs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So first step, we're going to transfer stitch from peg number 2 to peg number 1, and then from 4 to 5. We need these 2 pegs empty for our pattern. So the goal to have 1 stitch in the center, empty, empty, and then these are going to be the stitches traveling periodically. Next step, we're going to make stitches, and at the empty peg, we're just going to put the yarn behind it. Stitch in the center, yarn behind, stitch, stitch. So now you're going to make stitches everywhere where you can, essentially. So I'm going to make stitch number 1, 2 with both stitches, nothing at the empty peg, stitch, nothing at the empty peg, stitch, and the last. So the 2 on the sides are just to create a little bit of a frame for our technique. Next step, you're going to transfer 1 to 3, 5 to 3. So that might be a little tight. Okay. And now actually the peg number 2 and 3 will stay empty. However, the 1 and 5 will eventually receive a stitch. So behind, stitch, behind, stitch, behind. So on the pegs where we don't have the stitch on the bottom, we can only make a stitch at the next pass. So that will wait. Stitch, no stitch on the bottom, nothing. This peg will stay empty, and then our peg in the center currently has all these multiple stitches, but they will also go over the top of the peg. The empty peg will stay empty, it's just a float here. Then this one will wait for the following pass and stitch. Okay, I'm just going to repeat it several times, and then we're going to see how the pattern repeats. Stitch, empty, center, stitch, empty, stitch, stitch. So now we are in a position to make stitches everywhere except for the peg number 2 and peg number 4, which was the purpose, right? So the 1 and 5 are actually the ones that will travel. Let's do that several times and then see how the pattern will work. So that 1 and 3, 2 and 4 rather, should stay empty. And just maintain that float behind. Let's do it several more times. Oh, let me start on the other side. That was too tight. Yep, it already created the pattern inside here. So I'm just going to do a few more passes, cast off. But of course, we're going to talk a little bit about how to repeat this pattern. Okay, so Once you establish these pegs as empty pegs, they will stay empty. And so that repeat could happen maybe about 10 times, or depending on your gauge and what kind of a pattern you wish to create. You can also repeat it sideways to create those cable looking shapes with a traveling stitch, one next to each other. And when you are ready to repeat, the traveling stitch, you're simply going to take your stitch number 1 and transfer it back to the center, and stitch number 5, transfer back to the center. The empty pegs stay empty, and now we just want to create stitches on 1 and 5. So the pegs that are staying empty is 2 and 4, and this is 5 pegs repeat. Nothing here, since we don't have a stitch on the bottom. Then in the center again, we accumulated all these multiple stitches, and they all need to be transferred to the other side. Let's repeat that step a couple more times and take it all the pegs neatly, just to see what kind of shape we created. I missed that one. I have to put it back on. Okay. So empty, 1 in the center, and 1 and 1. Let's just do it a couple more times before we can take off the swatch and admire our work. You can definitely mark the pegs that will create the pattern with the rubber bands, or maybe even with the sticker with the numbers on it. So at the end, it's 1, 1 empty, 1, 1 empty, right? So the ones next to the center are only creating a float. Let's see where we are here. I think I'm going to take it off just at least so we can see a section of our pattern. So let's be neat here. And yeah, here we go. There is that 4 cable. Of course, I would recommend to make it longer, maybe at least 10 passes, or maybe you want to make it a little bit shorter, but definitely it's a very simple technique that creates a very effective pattern.